Hey guys, tonight we travel way, way back across sand and centuries to a time when the pyramids still had their original limestone cladding and your neighbors thought cats could curse you. Welcome to ancient Egypt. You're not a pharaoh. Sorry. You're not even a priest or a merchant. You're a regular villager, waking up before the sun dares peek over the desert horizon. And that's your first mistake thinking you're going to have a lazy morning. The day begins not with bird song, but with the sharp yapping of stray dogs, the rattling clank of a neighbor's water jar, and the first crackle of heat, already seeping through the thatched reed walls of your hut. There's no snooze button, no blackout curtains. Your mat of woven palm fiber is itchy. The pillow, a curved stone, is somehow both cold and unyielding, and the sound of buzzing flies reminds you that you're already behind on your chores. The air is thick with the scent of smoke, damp clay, and last night's leftover lentils, if there were any left. You shuffle outside, blinking at the pastel shimmer of the Nile in the distance. Villagers are already on the move. Women with headscarves carry baskets, kids chase goats, and one unlucky man is trying to push a stuck donkey with the resigned determination of someone who's done this too many times before. Your first mission? Water. You and your jar head to a small canal fed by the Nile. The water's cool miraculously, but has a faint tint of mud and mystery. You try not to think about what's upstream. While you fill your jug, a crocodile slinks lazily past the far bank. That's fine. That's fine, right? Back in the village, the houses look like oversized sandcastles. Mud brick walls, tiny high windows, flat roofs, no doors, just linen sheets flapping in the breeze. Everything's beige, baked, and slightly crumbly, even your feet. You haven't worn sandals in 3 weeks because they fell apart during last month's flood season. You step on something sharp, probably a date pit, possibly dung. You try not to think about it. The village buzzes in quiet rhythm. A woman is crushing grain with a giant stone, sending up dusty clouds that cling to her sweaty face. A boy is herding ducks with a reed switch, yelling curses older than the pyramids. Someone's already fishing standing in a canoe barely wider. Then a fruit basket, flinging a net and praying for something bigger than a minnow. You glance toward the eastern horizon. The sun isn't even all the way up, and it's already threatening. The air shimmers like a forge. You wonder how long until the sand starts to burn your feet. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian farmers had any real downtime between Nile floods, but you can confirm if there was ever a vacation, it's not happening this week, and then drums. Low and slow. A rhythmic boom coming from a distant estate. You squint. The overseer's compound. That means the work teams are forming. You gulp. You hoped for something easier today, maybe helping your cousin patch a roof or trade jars in the market. But no, a scribe, yes, a real one, with an actual reed pen tucked behind his ear, is walking up with a wooden roster. He doesn't even look at you, just waves a lazy hand toward the labor zone. You're on the early shift. Of course you are. Before the day has even truly begun, your life has already split into a dozen tiny discomforts. The scratch of linen against sunburned shoulders, the gravel underfoot, the constant buzz of insects near your ears, the knowing glance of the water carrier. Who remembers you spilled half your jug last week? That one last look at the Nile, still shimmering, still tempting. But no swimming today. Probably no break either. You trudge toward the mud pits, where someone's already pulling clay from the banks and stomping it with straw. It's not glamorous, not sacred. No one chants praise songs for mud haulers. But it's the only thing standing between you and the wrath of your village chief. And hey, at least the bricks aren't cursed. Probably. You're handed a wooden tool with a name you don't know, because no one bothers teaching you that. It's flat and slightly curved, probably designed to mix mud and straw. But really, it just feels like a paddle for stirring misery, the mud pit's steam and the rising sun. You step in up to your ankles, wincing as the cold sludge seeps between your toes. At first, you think it's not so bad cool, even. Give it 10 minutes. The sun bakes your back, the pit starts to bubble, and the clay thickens like badly cooked porridge that you stomp. You mix, you stir, and every 5 minutes someone yells at someone else for not doing it fast enough. Your job today is to help form bricks for a new grain silo, a government project, no less. Very prestigious. Except there's nothing glamorous about shoveling muck into wooden molds while someone with a shaved head and a papyrus checklist watches you like a disappointed aunt. He doesn't yell, but he doesn't need to. He just raises an eyebrow, and suddenly you're working twice as fast for no good reason. The bricks must be perfect. Uniform, smooth, strong. They'll bake in the sun for hours, stacked in neat rows. If any of them crack, you start over. And by you, we mean you. The scribe will simply jot down that your team underperformed and move on to his next inspection. Oh, and the straw you're mixing in, it smells like goat urine. Because it is goat urine. Probably. That's the magic bonding agent no one talks about in documentaries. As you haul the finished mold onto the drying mat, you realize how heavy it is. Maybe 20 pounds, maybe 30. You lose count after the 5th one. Your arms feel like they're made of wet linen. Your knees ache from crouching. Your lower back is officially declaring war, and the sun is now a full-blown tyrant in the sky. A boy runs past you. He's part of the water crew. Barefoot, probably 8 years old, balancing a jar on his head like a champion. You ask for a drink. He shrugs, scoops a sip out of the communal bucket, and hands it over. It tastes like yesterday's dust with a hint of algae. Still, you nearly cry from gratitude. You sit for a second, just one. That's your next mistake. The overseer barks your name. You're slacking. You're lazy. You're going to make the entire batch late. You want to explain that your shoulder just gave out, or that your hand has developed a new twitch, but he's already walking away. You mutter something under your breath, in English, because it's safer that way. By mid-morning, you've rotated from mixing mud to hauling bricks. Someone hands you a makeshift sled made of palm bark. You load 6 bricks. You drag it across gravel, dust, and dried donkey droppings. Sweat. You trip. You start hallucinating what cold water used to taste like. And then a glimmer of hope. The lunch bell? Well, there's no bell. It's more like an old man hitting a pot and yelling, "Food." But still, it's a break. You stagger over to the food line, where a woman is handing out clay bowls of something steaming, and gray. It's a lentil mash, thickened with barley. You don't ask about seasoning. You sit under a patch of shade, lean your back against the brick wall, and breathe. The food is warm, slightly sour, and flecked with sand. Everything in Egypt is flecked with sand. That's just how it is. You crunch, you swallow. You don't ask questions. A friend or the closest thing to a friend in this sunburnt factory of sadness sits beside you. He's local, missing 3, teeth possibly older than he looks, and convinced that rubbing goose fat on your knees can fix anything. You nod along. He tells you stories of a cousin who worked in the royal granaries and got stomped by a runaway ox. Apparently the ox was sacred, so the family got no compensation. Should have died from a hippo, he says, chewing noisily. Then they'd at least get a temple plaque. Historians still argue whether regular laborers like you were forced or paid, but based on how your back feels, rewarded isn't the right word, and here's the kicker. This job is considered lucky. You're not breaking rocks in the quarries. You're not digging irrigation canals in hippo territory. You're not building pyramids during flood season. You're on a state grain project. That's practically an office job. Then you sneeze. Once, twice, a woman nearby glares at you. She murmurs something and spits on the ground. Quirky local superstition? Probably. It's said that sneezes release bad spirits, or good ones. Depends who you ask. She might bless you later, or hex your dinner. Could go either way. The break ends. You sigh and rise, brushing the sand from your linen skirt. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. The sand is in your clothes, your nose, your soul. Back to the pit. Back to the bricks. You trudge through the heat, trying not to think about how many hours are left in the day. Time blurs, your hands blister, your neck crisps. And then, from somewhere distant, maybe the temple, maybe the governor's estate, you hear music. Drums, flutes, some kind of chant. It sounds festive. You're not. Invited, you're still dragging bricks. It's lunchtime again, or at least, it should be. You've long since lost track. The sun is directly overhead, beating down like the wrath of Ra himself. Shadows shrink to puddles under people's feet, and every surface you touch feels like a stove. You imagine you could fry an egg on a brick, except you don't have an egg, or oil, or hope your stomach growls. It's that familiar ancient Egyptian peasant, hunger less of a sharp pang, more of a dull ache that settles in like a squatter. Back at the mess area, you get your second and final meal of the day, a hunk of sour barley bread that doubles as a dental challenge and a small bowl of fermented millet beer. Yes, beer, that's your beverage. It's thick, lumpy, and only technically liquid, somewhere between soup and cereal, with the flavor profile of soggy crackers and regret. You dip the bread into the beer. The bread crumbles into a sandpapery mush. A fly lands on it. You shrug and eat it anyway. You've stopped caring. You glance over and see someone else pick a tiny pebble out of their bread. You do the same and realize, oh, wait, your bread isn't gritty from the desert wind. It's gritty because the grinding stones used to make flour were just sandstone slabs, a bit of rock in every bite. Dentists, if they existed for you, would weep. Historians love pointing out how ancient Egyptians had some of the worst dental problems in the ancient world. And you get it. You're chewing this bread like it's punishment. Your molars are crying. One loose grain slips between your teeth like a traitor. You'd complain, but the guy next to you has no front teeth. And he's 20. Across the square, A child tries to chase a chicken, but faceplants into a pile of discarded reed baskets. No one helps. The chicken wins. You think about dessert. That's a joke. There is no dessert. But someone hands around dried dates, tough, wrinkled, suspiciously chewy. You pretend you like them. Everyone does. It's a survival mechanism. As you chew, you take in your surroundings. The village is mostly mud brick boxes in rows, like Lego if Lego gave you heat stroke. The street is just compacted sand and dung. There's no real sewage system, just shared pits and hope. Your home, if you can call it that, is a single room with a low ceiling and no actual bed. Maybe later you'll sleep on the roof. If it's cool enough and the mosquitoes are too aggressive. Back inside, you find your host family gathered around the hearth, if by hearth you mean a clay bowl full of glowing charcoal and incense. A woman is crushing coriander seeds with a worn stone. A teenage boy is fixing a fishing net. A baby is gnawing on a sandal strap. You sit, you breathe. You try not to faint. Then someone brings out the real highlight of the day. A mirror, not glass polished. Copper. It's warped, spotty, and kind of green around the edges. You look into it. Mistake. Your face is burned on one side, sweaty on the other, and entirely too crusty for a human being. There's a smear of mud on your neck, and your eyelids are outlined in... Wait, is that eyeliner? Yep, cool. You ask why? Someone smeared it on you while you were working. A girl nearby shrugs and mutters something about sun protection. Apparently, kohl's not just decorative, it's also medicinal, insect-repelling, and possibly magical. Triple threat. It's made from galena, a type of lead ore. You wonder if that's safe. You're told not to ask so many questions. Just wear it and be grateful you're not blind from the glare. Everyone's wearing cosmetics here. Men, women, kids. Some have blue-green eyeshadow made from ground malachite. Others paint their lips red with ochre. Beauty is power. And power is survival. But that's not the weirdest thing they're using today. That honor goes to the crocodile dung. You overhear an older woman talking about applying sun paste to her grandson's back. You assume it's some herbal ointment. Then you smell it and realize it is, unmistakably, poop. Not just any poop. Nile crocodile poop. Mixed with natron and maybe olive oil, depending on your level of wealth and tolerance for discomfort. It's supposed to be a sunscreen or a fertility charm, or both. You ask how they discovered that. You are met with a blank stare and a single ominous phrase, "The gods showed us." You decide not to pursue the topic. Historians still debate whether crocodile dung was actually used medicinally or just ceremonially. You don't care. You just know it stinks. It's on your shirt now, and no amount of incense is going to cover that up. You step outside for air. Bad idea. The sun hits you like a slap. You retreat under a wooden awning, praying for wind. None comes out in the distance. You hear the bleating of goats and the clatter of cartwheels. Someone's trying to coax a donkey through a narrow lane. The donkey, unbothered, plants its hooves and refuses to move. The man starts singing to it. The donkey kicks him. A teenager is washing laundry in a basin. She slaps a tunic against a flat rock and mutters a curse at a missing button. You consider helping, but realize your fingers have turned into raisins. A dog sniffs your ankle. You flinch. It walks off, Disappointed in you, Dot, as the sun begins to dip just slightly. You finally get a break. Not from work, but from the sheer violence of the midday heat. The air cools a single degree. It feels like a miracle. You hear laughter from a nearby courtyard. Someone's telling a story about a snake in a storage jar. You sit on a step, rest your chin in your hands, and try to remember what air conditioning felt like. Spoiler, it never existed here. Evening doesn't mean rest, it just means a different kind of stress. You've barely survived the afternoon, and now it's tax time. A man in crisp white linen appears near the village granary, flanked by two younger scribes holding clay tablets and absurdly judgmental expressions. These are the royal tax agents, and they're here for your share. You didn't volunteer for this. No one ever does. They don't knock on your door, they shout. A name is read aloud. A farmer rushes forward with a small sack of barley. The scribe squints, pinches the grain between his fingers, and mutters something to his assistant. Another name, another sack. The pile grows, so do the complaints. You bring yours forward. The sack is light, because your harvest was light, because the flood was late, because locusts showed up like they owned the place. You smile nervously. The scribe doesn't look up, just frowns and adds a symbol to the board. A fine. You're not even sure what you did wrong. You tried, but it doesn't matter. Taxes are owed to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is literally a god on earth. Try telling a god that you had a bad week. The temple owns your land. The land owes taxes. You owe the temple. The temple owes the state. It's a divine chain of obligation, one that always ends with you handing over grain. You didn't even finish threshing. You're allowed to keep a portion. The portion that isn't moldy, rat-bitten, or already stolen by bandits. You stash it in your home in large clay jars sealed with mud and straw. Sometimes you mark the jars with protective symbols. A little eye of Horus here, a cat god there. You're not superstitious, but you've seen too many neighbors lose whole stores to accidents. And then the scribe says something that makes your stomach drop. You're late on your last delivery. What? You blink, Dot, apparently. Someone else in the household forgot to submit a mid-season count. The scribe doesn't care who, just that it's missing. Which means you guessed it, another fine. Or an extra Labor Day. Or both. You ask if there's an appeal process. He actually laughs. Not a full laugh, just that tight, judgmental exhale. That means, oh, you poor sweet thing. He makes another mark. You take your empty sack home and try not to kick anything. On the way, you pass a mural being painted on a temple wall. It's beautiful figures walking sideways, palms forward, wearing perfect linen and makeup. You don't recognize any of them. Definitely not peasants. You glance down at your own stained, threadbare tunic and sigh. One figure is offering grain to Osiris. Another is being embraced by a god with a falcon head. No one is sweating. No one is being fined. Dot must be nice. You reach your home if a 10 by 10 cube with no door counts as a home, and sit down beside the food jars. You count them. Again? Maybe you miscalculated. You didn't. Woman from 2 houses down peeks in and hands you a tiny loaf. Spare, she says. Extra from temple leftovers. You thank her like she just gifted you a camel. Inside, your host family is whispering. One of the neighbors says a man refused to pay his taxes last month. Now he's been assigned to dredge canals in crocodile territory. They say his cousin found only his sandals, but that might be gossip. Probably. Historians still argue whether punishment for missed taxes was as brutal as the records suggest. You lean toward yes. Still, you try to keep perspective. Everyone here has debts, even the village priest. You heard he owes so much barley to the temple granary that he started selling prayers wholesale. A quick chant for a half-loaf. Protection. Spells for jars of beer. People adapt. You glance outside again. The sky is turning coppery. A breeze kicks up warm but welcome. It blows a small cloud of dust into your eyes. You blink it away, then immediately sneeze. Twice. Great. Someone nearby hisses. Bad omen, she mutters. You resist the urge to scream. Instead, you head to the edge of the village, where a row of reeds separates the homes from the storage pits. Children are playing, chasing frogs. Someone's roasting fish on a stick. A young man is carving hieroglyphs into a scrap of pottery. He waves you over. You squat beside him and watch as he draws the symbol for field beside the symbol for crying man. He chuckles. That's me during harvest. You nod. Then he flips the shard over and sketches something strange. A snake wearing a crown. Vomiting stars. You raise an eyebrow. New God, he says. Or a dream I had? You nod again, slower this time. Egyptians are nothing if not creative. Their gods have falcon heads, lion heads, ibis beaks, and hippo thighs. There's even one that's basically a walking scarab beetle. You never quite know who you're offending or accidentally worshipping, and that's part of the danger, not knowing. One wrong word, one taboo gesture, and suddenly your household is cursed for 3 generations. Still, the view's nice. The Nile glows in the distance, framed by palm trees in that eerie golden light that only comes right before dusk. A heron takes flight. A frog croaks. The sky turns from orange to plum. You think just for a moment that maybe it's not so bad. Then you remember you still owe the temple 5 jars of barley. And your back still hurts. And tomorrow is another Labor Day. You sigh. But the breeze keeps blowing, and for now, that's enough. The night settles in with a kind of quiet you rarely get anymore. No engines, no distant traffic, no hum of electricity. Just frogs, crickets, and the occasional grumble of a donkey who's deeply unhappy with his life choices. You step inside. Your hut, which now smells strongly of smoke, sweat, and something vaguely herbal. Someone's been burning incense again, maybe to keep spirits away, or maybe to keep the mosquitoes at bay. The line blurs. Inside, a woman is smearing thick, black lines around her eyes using a pointed stick and a small bowl of what looks like wet charcoal. You've seen this before. It's coal, the all-purpose cosmetic. Protection against glare, insects, and evil spirits. Multifunctional, like a magical Sharpie. She offers to paint your eyes too. You hesitate, then agree. The cool paste drags across your eyelids. You look like a sleep-deprived raccoon now, but everyone nods approvingly. Good, says someone. Now your soul won't leak out your face. Comforting. You've barely sat down when another neighbor arrives, holding a jar of something thick, pale, and suspiciously chunky. Oh no, you mutter. It's the crocodile dung again. Apparently someone heard you have a sunburn, so they brought ointment. It smells like a crime scene, and you're not convinced it isn't one. They insist it's been blessed by a priest and stirred counterclockwise under the new moon. You mutter a thank you, because what else can you do? You retreat to the corner of the room and try to apply it while holding your breath. You fail. The family's grandmother chuckles and says you're being dramatic. She starts listing all the other things they've used for medicine. Fermented goose fat, pulverized, beetles, mashed moldy bread. The mold one actually worked penicillium, anyone? But they didn't know that. They just assumed it was divine. Outside, a temple bell rings in the distance. You ask what it's for. Goddess based its procession, someone says. They're honoring her tonight? You peek outside. The street's been swept. Lanterns glow on poles made of bundled reeds. A group of musicians walks past, plucking lyres and tapping small hand drums. A few men carry a statue of the cat goddess Bastet on a wooden platform. She's painted gold and black, wearing earrings and holding a sistrum. People toss flower petals. Children dance. Women sing. You follow the crowd because, let's be honest, it's either this or sit in the hut and inhale reptile poop fumes. The procession stops at a small shrine. Offerings are laid out: bread, fish, a pot of honey. Someone adds a little bowl of milk. One man presents a live mouse, then quickly reconsiders and lets it go. You lean against a wall and listen. The music's hypnotic, all lilting rhythms and high-pitched flutes. A few people are drinking date wine, fermented, sweet, and probably stronger than it looks. One guy already passed out in the sand and is being fanned by his own sandal. You're offered a sip. You hesitate, then shrugged at it. Sweet, thick, and hits your brain like a heat wave. Suddenly everything feels soft and golden. You smile at someone. They smile back. Or maybe it's a hallucination. Who cares? The priestess begins a chant. Her voice is steady, rising above the music like wind over water. She holds a cat in her arms, a real one, looking deeply unimpressed, and blesses the crowd. The cat sneezes. Everyone cheers. You ask someone what's being prayed for. Protection, they say, from illness, evil eyes, and crocodiles. You nod. All reasonable concerns. The festival continues with dancing. It's not elegant more like organized wobbling. You join in because no one's judging. It's one of the few times in this life when laughter is allowed, even encouraged. Then a man in the crowd starts shouting. Everyone freezes. He's arguing with someone else loudly. Something about spilled beer and stolen sandals. Voices rise. A third man gets involved. A woman throws a handful of flowers. The priestess claps her hands and calls for calm. Then the cat hisses. That works. Everyone immediately steps back and bows. The fight dissolves. The priestess lifts the cat and walks away victorious. You blink. You've just witnessed divine feline. Conflict resolution. Historians still argue whether cats were worshipped in the modern religious sense, but clearly, no one's taking chances. The wine hits you again, so you sit on a step and lean against a wall. The sandstone is still warm from the day's sun. You close your eyes. The music fades into a blur. You drift a little. Someone places a garland around your neck. Someone else hands you a date. You chew it without opening your eyes. It's quiet again. Just the rustle of palm fronds. the echo of soft footsteps, and a woman softly singing a lullaby to her baby. You should go home, eventually, but for now, the warmth, the buzz, the scent of incense, it's all oddly comforting. You feel, just for a moment, that you belong, even if your back still hurts, even if you're covered in a questionable ointment. You're here. You survived the day, and Bastet didn't smite you. Not bad for ancient Egypt. You wait before dawn dash again, not because you're eager, but because a chicken stepped on your face. Apparently, it got into the house during the night and made itself at home on your straw mat. You groan, sit up, and immediately regret it. Your head feels like it was stuffed with reeds and cursed by 3 separate gods. That wine last night? Mistake. The house is dim and smoky, lit only by a faint glow coming from a charcoal pot someone kept burning through the night. You hear quiet rustling outside, the gentle splash of water being drawn, and the rhythmic thud of a wooden paddle stirring porridge. You drag yourself up, splash some water on your face, and smear fresh coal under your eyes with a burnt stick. You're officially one of them now. Time to face the Nile. Today you've been asked to help with water duties. That sounds easy. You smile. Mistake number 2. First off, the Nile isn't just a river. It's the river, the source of life, the sacred artery of Egypt, the eternal provider, and also your bath, your laundry room, your fishing zone, your fridge, and your occasional toilet. You approach the banks as the sun begins to shimmer over, the water giving it that hazy, golden glow that makes even mosquitoes look majestic. The air smells like damp earth, wet reeds, and fish streams. You're handed a jar and told to fetch water. Simple, except the jar weighs roughly the same as a small child, and the embankment is steep, muddy, and covered in tiny frogs with a death wish. You slip, not dramatically, just enough to get 1 foot completely soaked and your pride bruised. You recover. The frogs mock you silently. You lower the jar, fill it, and heave it back up the slope like a mortal reenacting the myth of Sisyphus. You immediately understand why ancient Egyptians trained their upper bodies by just existing. By the time you return to the house, your arms are trembling and your shoulder has gone numb. No one congratulates you. Someone just grabs the jar and starts boiling water for lentils. You wander back toward the river for your real task of the day. Bathing. Yes, cleansing yourself in the sacred Nile. The experience you imagined as tranquil and spiritual. It is not. First of all, you're not alone. Half the village is here. Some are fishing, some are scrubbing clothes on rocks, some are collecting lotus flowers for perfume or rituals, and one man is clearly just yelling at ducks. You find a semi-private spot behind a cluster of reeds. Strip down to your undercloth and wade into the shallows. The water is brisk, not refreshing, just brisk. You gasp. A leech immediately introduces itself to your calf. You remove it with the same urgency you'd use for a landmine. As you scrub with a coarse reed sponge, you notice a woman beside you slathering her skin with a greenish paste. Lotus root and crushed barley, she says. Good for scorpion stings and marriage proposals. You thank her and edge slightly farther away. Another man is using clay to exfoliate. His skin is smoother than yours will ever be. He notices your burn and points to a patch of riverbank. Dig there. Cool mud, soothes like Sekhmet's mercy. You dig? It's cold and silky, and it really does feel divine. You begin to think you could get used to this until a fish nibbles your toe, and you shriek like a cursed prince. Everyone looks. You pretend nothing happened. As you dry off, you watch a child toss a net into the water and pull out 3 small fish and 1 very angry turtle. The turtle escapes. The child is inconsolable. Nearby, 2 women argue about whether to wash their clothes upstream or downstream. Apparently, one believes spirits gather near the reeds and mournful ghosts can cling to fabric. The other says that's nonsense and ghosts are strictly nocturnal. They compromise by spitting into the river for luck. You nod slowly and edge. Away again, back at your home. Someone is filtering drinking water through a linen cloth and whispering a prayer to Isis. They catch you watching and hand you a cup. You hesitate, then drink. It's cool, faintly sweet, and somehow earthy. You think about all the hands that touched it, all the places that water has been, all the creatures that might contributed. You drink anyway. Historians still debate whether Nile water was actually safe to drink. Some say it was filtered, boiled, and blessed. Others say people just developed heroic digestive systems. You don't want to know which theory is right. Later, you help with storage. You and a few others head to the grain pit's sunken chambers with sloped sides and sealed lids designed to keep rats and thieves out. You open one to check supplies and nearly faint from the stench. It's a blend of old barley, mold, beetles, and hope. You scoop out what you need and reseal it with a stamped clay plug. The stamp bears the symbol of the village scribe. If it's broken next time, someone's in trouble. Probably you. You pass the time by watching a bird skim the water surface, then nearly choke on a bug. A goat bleats from the rooftop of a neighbor's house. No one knows how it got there. No one helps. This seems normal. As the afternoon wears on, the heat creeps back. You try to rest under a palm tree, but the ground is alive with ants. You relocate to a small shade patch near the river wall, but the smell of fish makes your stomach turn. You decide to skip the nap. Instead, you listen to the distant rhythm of temple drums and think about what you miss most from your time. Deodorant? Ice? Silence? You remember someone earlier saying that the Nile isn't just water, it's a living god. You wonder what kind of god offers fish, frogs, and hydration, but also leeches and diarrhea. A balanced one, probably. You return from the river just as the sky starts to dim again, painted in streaks of tangerine and dusty violet. The day has wrung you out like a wet rag, but tonight, there's something different in the air. Drums. Again, but this time louder, closer, accompanied by flutes, rattles, and the unmistakable sound of people who've had just enough wine to think they can dance. Neighbor leans out from behind a linen curtain and grins. Big festival tonight, she says, her eyes gleaming. Sekhmet's feast. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, fire, plague, and also, oddly enough, healing. She's the kind of deity who can smite entire cities and then offer you a poultice for your rash, multifaceted. You're handed a wreath of dried lotus petals and told to wear it. You try to say no, but a child shoves it onto your head with the stubborn insistence of someone who has done this 50 times. The temple plaza is already pulsing with sound and movement. Fires crackle in iron braziers. Musicians line the perimeter, each seemingly playing a different rhythm, but somehow sinking into something hypnotic. A man spins in circles, arms out, eyes closed. A woman balances a jug on her head and chants in a voice that makes your arm hair rise. People are laughing, swaying, calling out blessings to Sekhmet, offering prayers for strength and protection. Some are definitely already drunk, you're told. This is a sacred party, a kind where mortals and gods blur for one glorious, wine-soaked night. You join a group near the edge of the crowd and accept a small clay cup of date wine. It's less chunky this time, almost sweet. You sip cautiously, then a little faster. The music builds. In the center of the plaza, priests carry out a statue of Sekhmet, gold-plated, with obsidian eyes and an expression like she just dared someone to challenge her. She holds an ankh in one hand and a papyrus, scepter in the other. Her lioness head gleams under the torchlight. Everyone hushes as offerings are laid at her feet. Grilled duck, fresh bread, flowers, and oddly tiny jars of beer. You lean over to someone and whisper, "Do gods drink?" They nod solemnly, especially her. There's a story, they say, about how Sekhmet once got so angry she nearly destroyed humanity. To stop her, Ra tricked her into drinking beer dyed red to look like blood. She got drunk and passed out, sparing the world. So naturally, tonight, everyone drinks in honor of that hangover. Historians still argue whether these festivals were actual drunken orgies or just symbolic rituals. You are starting to suspect. Maybe both. You take another sip, then another. A man grabs your hand and spins you into a dance. You stumble. He laughs. You laugh. Everyone's covered in sweat and wine and flower petals. A woman falls into a basket of onions and comes out victorious, holding one like a trophy. Someone begins chanting an ancient verse. A priestess walks in slow circles, rattling a sistrum, a kind of ceremonial rattle shaped like a horseshoe. You watch the tiny metal discs shimmer and clink, a sound that pierces through the heat and noise like a clear thought in a fever dream. You sway. You spin. You lose track of time. At some point, a tray of food appears. Spiced lentils, roasted fish, something that might be figs. You eat with your fingers, savoring the burst of flavor. It's the best thing you've tasted since you got here. You realize you haven't thought about labor, taxes, or sunburn in hours. Then a procession begins. You follow the crowd to the edge of the plaza, where priests lead a symbolic reenactment. Sekhmet's rage, the near annihilation, the red beer sacrifice, the calming of her fury. People cheer as a barrel of beer is rolled into the square and poured out dramatically onto the ground. A moment of silence. Then wild applause. Someone passes you another cup. You accept. Eventually the music slows. The crowd settles. People begin lighting small floating lamps and releasing them into the river. You walk with them, watching the flickering lights bob on the current, carried off by the gentle lap of the water. A man beside you says softly, "The Nile carries everything. Our wishes, our regrets, our hangovers." You nod because yes, you're going to regret this in the morning. But in this moment, with the breeze brushing your cheeks, the stars stretching over your head, and the firelight dancing in everyone's eyes, you feel like maybe you understand Why, they believed the gods were everywhere. They had to be. How else could you survive this place? You sit on a stone bench near the riverbank and close your eyes. The night is warm, but not oppressive. The scent of incense, flowers, and charred fish lingers in the air. You hear someone humming. You think it's a lullaby or maybe just a wine-fueled sigh. Someone's child is asleep in a woven basket beside you. A cat brushes past your leg. You don't even flinch, Dot. You could stay here for a while. Sure, your feet hurt, your linen is soaked through, and you might have accidentally pledged yourself to a lion goddess. But still, this is something. This is Egypt, Dot, and right now, with the Nile at your back and the stars reflecting. In the water, you feel if not safe, then at least Dot, held, like the land is letting you rest for a moment. Just one moment, Dot, and in ancient Egypt, that's more than most people get. You wake up on a roof, Dot, not your roof, Dot, not your house. You blink slowly, noticing that your pillow is a bundle of linen scraps, and someone's cat is sleeping on your chest, like you're just another sun-warmed stone. Your head throbs. Your breath tastes like dried dates and regret. Somewhere a rooster is announcing its daily identity crisis at full volume. You sit up too fast and immediately wish you hadn't. Below, the village is already alive. Kids chase geese. A woman hollers about a missing sandal. A man is hauling something large and suspiciously wrapped in palm fronds. You climb down the ladder, feet wobbling, and head back home, where the family you're crashing with greets you like nothing happened. Someone hands you a damp cloth for your face. You nod, press it to your forehead, and try to remember what dignity feels like. Then someone whispers, "We think the house has a ghost." Right. Apparently strange noises were heard last night. Jars fell. A reed mat curled at the edges. The dog howled once, then went silent. These are all signs of what? Depends on who you ask. Some say it's an ancestor spirit, one who wasn't properly buried. Others say it's a house spirit angry about disrespectful guests. You look around at your borrowed sandals, the empty wine cup still by the door, and your own disheveled state. You try not to take it personally. The head of the household decides to call in someone who knows things. Within the hour, a woman arrives with a basket of dried herbs, 2 wooden figurines, and a bowl of salt. You sit in the corner, sipping barley broth as she walks the perimeter of the house, muttering incantations. She pauses near a storage jar, narrows her eyes, and tosses in a pinch of NATR, own dot, just in case. You ask her what happens if the spirit is real. She smiles. Then we negotiate. Apparently, ghosts in Egypt aren't necessarily malicious. Some just want attention, or wine, or for someone to remember their favorite prayer. Others, a little more difficult. One story involves a woman who ignored her grandmother's ghost and promptly lost every chicken she owned. Another involves a man haunted by sneezing fits until he recited the correct funerary verse. Historians still debate how seriously ancient Egyptians took ghosts. But based on your mourning, they were absolutely not taking chances. After the spirit expert leaves, the house feels lighter. Or maybe that's just the incense talking. Either way, no jars have fallen in the last 10 minutes, so that's progress. You're assigned to household chores today. Not hard labor, not taxation, just home duties. You think, finally, something manageable. That was your next mistake. First task, sweeping. Sounds easy, but these aren't smooth tile floors. These are packed earth surfaces littered with dust, ash, goat hair, and somehow melon seeds. The broom is a bundle of stiff palm twigs tied with rope. You push, you stir up a storm. The dust goes directly into your eyes. A child throws a fig at your back. You pretend not to notice. Next up, food prep. A woman hands you a grinding stone and a bowl of emmer wheat. Your job? Turn it into flour. Simple, except you now understand why everyone here has arms like rope and teeth like fossils. The upper stone is heavy, the wheat is stubborn, and your rhythm is unconvincing. You manage a small handful of rough flour in half an hour. It's full of grit. Your arms feel like boiled reeds. A toddler laughs at you. You glance toward the masayu, family's clay oven, a beehive-shaped dome of cracked mud, warm to the touch. Someone is baking bread, carefully slapping raw dough onto the hot interior walls. The smell is heavenly. Toasted grain, smoke, a hint of fennel. You move to help, but someone waves you away. You grind. You're not oven-worthy yet. Fair. Later, you're asked to patch a hole in the ceiling. This involves climbing back onto the roof, sigh, hauling mud and straw, and slapping it into place with your bare hands. Half of it lands on your tunic. The other half oozes down the side of your leg. You try to smooth it out. A pigeon flies by and poops on your shoulder. You say nothing. You just let it happen. Lunch is simple. Lentil stew, some dried dates, and bread that breaks into your molars like tiny hammers. You eat it anyway, because you burn more calories grinding grain than you did hauling bricks. Afterward, people begin resting. The midday heat is brutal again, and there's nothing to do but find shade and sit still. You settle into a corner and close your eyes. Then you hear a whisper. The ghost is back. You groan. This time it's just a door curtain fluttering. Or maybe a lizard, but still no one relaxes. Not really. Someone hangs a protective amulet over the threshold, a tiny carving of the Eye of Horus, strung on a papyrus cord. You ask. If it works, they shrug. Can't hurt. You lie back and stare at the ceiling. It's low and uneven, with bits of old straw poking through the dried mud. You listen to the house, the creak of wooden beams, the scratch of a mouse, the distant hum of bees near the entrance. You think about how ancient Egyptian houses weren't built for comfort. They were built to be survivable, cool in summer, dry in flood season, small, sturdy, practical. Privacy, not a thing. You share everything: food, space, gossip, ghosts, and yet there's something strangely peaceful in it. You're not alone, ever, which is overwhelming, yes, but also kind of grounding. Someone hands you a small clay figure. For the ghost, they say, it's a crudely carved hippo, painted blue with little black eyes. You're told it's Tauret, the protective goddess of childbirth, fertility, and house safety. You set it beside the jar that fell earlier, just in case. The sun begins to dip again. The light shifts from harsh gold to soft amber. People stretch, yawn, and resume their routines. Kids chase each other around the courtyard. Someone plays a lute with 2 strings. A woman braids her sister's hair while humming a prayer. You sit with your knees tucked to your chest and realize this isn't rest. This is life. Constant motion. Constant presence. Even the ghosts are part of it. You may not be oven-worthy. You may be haunted. But for now, you belong. You're awoken before sunrise again, but this time by a knock. Not a polite knock. A royal knock. The kind that makes your spine stiffen before your eyes even open. Standing in the doorway is a man in a pristine white tunic with a gold-inked scroll tucked under one arm in the posture of someone who hasn't lifted a brick in his life. He doesn't even introduce himself, just says, "You're needed for transport. Tomb site. Hurry." Tomb site? You blink. Pyramid work? He raises an eyebrow. No, a noble tomb. Outskirts? You've been assigned. You groan? This is how it starts. You say yes to one temple errand, and suddenly you're carting sandstone halfway across Giza. You barely have time to grab your water jar and wrap a scarf around your head before being hustled onto an ox-drawn cart. The ox looks miserable. You relate. The trip is bumpy, dusty, and entirely too bright for this hour. The landscape changes slowly as you move out of the fertile village zone into more barren stretches golden sand. Cracked earth, scrubby tufts of plant life, and the occasional very dramatic vulture on a rock, judging your life choices. You arrive at the site around mid-morning. And no, it's not the pyramids. It's not even the big state-run necropolis. This is a noble's tomb, set into a rocky hillside, with a low facade, faded paintings, and scaffolding made of creaky wood lashed with rope. Still, it's impressive. The entrance is flanked by two tall statues, both of the noble in identical poses, holding a staff in one hand and a scroll in the other, like he's ready to sue someone from the afterlife. A scribe approaches, hands you a chisel, and points to a cart of limestone blocks. You're here to assist with shaping the outer casing, not building, exactly more like smoothing, trimming, aligning. Think ancient architectural quality control. You sigh and set to work. The chisel is dull. The stone is stubborn. Dust fills your nose, your mouth, your soul. Your hands ache. Your arms protest. Your knees crackle. You pause to breathe, leaning on your tool. A fellow worker beside you is sketching hieroglyphs into the plaster. Not decorating, just copying instructions from a papyrus scroll. You glance over. The scroll lists food offerings for the noble's afterlife pantry. Bread, beer, onions, ducks. You wonder if the man's soul will be eternally bloated from the feast, or if he's still waiting for someone to offer him dessert. Inside the tomb, things are even weirder. You're called in to help pass jars down a narrow tunnel. The air inside is cooler, still, and strangely charged. The walls are painted with vivid scenes. The noble hunting birds in a papyrus marsh, receiving gifts from kneeling servants, playing senate with what you assume is a god in disguise. One painting shows him sailing on a golden boat, with stars above him and fish swimming underneath. A full-on afterlife cruise. You hand off jars to someone down the line, trying not to trip. Over the uneven floor, a jar slips. You catch it. Barely. Someone claps. "Good reflexes," a voice says. "Don't get cursed." You laugh. They don't. You ask, jokingly, if the tomb is cursed. They shrug. Not this one. Probably. But they did place a protective spell on the door. You glance at the doorway. It's carved with a symbol you recognize, a pair of outstretched wings and a sun disk. You ask what it says. The worker replies, "If you disturb this place, may your tongue turn to ash and your family's goats be infertile for 7 generations." Charming. Historians still debate how seriously tomb curses were taken by the general public. But everyone you meet today tiptoes, whispers, and mutters small prayers under their breath. You follow their lead. You're given a break around midday. You sit near a rocky outcrop overlooking the tomb, sipping water and chewing on a date. The view is oddly majestic: rolling dunes, pale cliffs, the endless horizon dot in the distance. You spot a real pyramid. Faint but unmistakable. You ask a fellow laborer if they've ever worked on one. He snorts. You think they're built by people like us? Apparently not. The biggest pyramids are old news constructed centuries ago, mostly for kings. These days tombs are smaller, more modest, but still heavily stylized. More focus on precision, less on grandeur. He leans back, on his elbows and sighs. But they still want to be remembered. That's the point. You ask him if he'd want a tomb. He chuckles. Sure, a small one. Just big enough for my name, a loaf of bread, and maybe one good joke. You smile. Not a bad idea. The work resumes. You help move jars of natron used to dry out bodies before mummification. It smells like ancient beach sand and concentrated effort. A worker reminds you not to drop them. Last week, someone did, and the stench chased them away for days. In a side chamber, you glimpse a burial pit. Empty for now, but it's lined with fine linen, ivory combs, and 2 pairs of sandals. One for the journey, one for eternity. You realize you're standing in a house for the dead, not just a grave but a future home. Every object placed here has meaning. Every color on the wall, every inscription, every tiny statue, it's all part of a script to ensure the noble soul makes it safely to the afterlife. You wonder what kind of afterlife they imagined: a lush garden, a giant banquet, a field of reeds where your only task is to stroll around and pet sacred cows. You hope it's cooler than this. Your shift ends near dusk. The overseer releases you with a curt nod. You pile onto the cart, your body aching in places you didn't know existed. The ox sighs. So do you. On the ride home, the sun sets behind the dunes, casting long shadows across the sand. The wind picks up just enough to keep the flies away. Someone beside you hums a tune, maybe a hymn, maybe just a working song. You lean back, watching the stars begin to prick the darkening sky. You may not have built a pyramid today, but you carved a piece of history. And hopefully didn't anger any ghosts. You don't mean to end up at the embalming tent. You were just looking for water, that's all. You wandered a little too far down the wrong path near the edge of the necropolis. 1 minute you're admiring a row of painted steely gorges, solemn, strangely peaceful, and the next you're face to face with a man holding what looks suspiciously like a human liver. He nods in greeting. You blink. Welcome to the business of making bodies eternal. The embalmer doesn't stop what he's doing. He's too busy packing natron into the chest cavity of a recently deceased villager. The body is laid out on a sloped stone table, surrounded by baskets of linen, clay jars, chunks of resin, and a handful of tools that all look like they were designed for torture and or fine carpentry. You freeze. You try to back away quietly, but someone behind you says, "Perfect timing. We need help carrying more salt." You turn to see a teenage apprentice grinning and gesturing toward a pile of natron sacks, each one the size of a small boulder, and apparently destined for the storage. Congratulations. You've been drafted into the afterlife prep crew. You shoulder a bag barely and follow the boy into the tent. It smells exactly how you expect. Hot linen, dried herbs, and a sharp, salty tang that clings to your nose hairs. The apprentice is chatty. "This one died clean," he says, nodding toward the current project. "No broken bones. Easy work." You glance at the body again. It's surprisingly serene. The skin has begun to dry and pull tight, the limbs bound close to the torso. You realize it's already been here for days. Maybe weeks. You ask, cautiously, "What's next?" "Organs are out," he says, counting on his fingers. "Liver, lungs, stomach, intestines, each gets its own jar. Heart stays in, usually, unless it's rotten. Then we fake it." You raise an eyebrow. "Fake it?" He shrugs. "Sometimes we use a small carved beetle, but gods don't always double check." "Good to know." He points out the canopic jars, 4 of them, each with a different head: baboon, falcon, jackal, and human. "They guard the guts," he explains. "Each one has a job." You nod like you understand. You don't. Then you see something that makes your stomach lurch. A hooked bronze tool. "You've heard about this." You point to it. The boy grins. "Nose hook. Pulls the brain out." You take a step back. He laughs. You get used to it eventually. Historians still argue whether the brain was considered useless or just inconvenient. Either way, in this job it ends up in a discard bowl faster than you can say neuroplasticity. The chief embalmer enters. His robe is finer than the others, and his hands are stained yellow from resin and natron. He carries a scroll and murmurs a prayer as he walks in. Everyone bows slightly. He notices you. "New helper?" You open your mouth to explain this is all a big misunderstanding, but before you can speak, he hands you a bundle of linen strips. "Wrap practice," he says. "Go slow." You're led to a training dummy, a bundle of reeds tied into the vague shape of a human torso. You watch as the apprentice demonstrates the wrapping technique. Overlapping, spiraling, neat. You try. Yours looks like someone mummified a goose with stage fright. Still, they pat your shoulder. You'll get better. You're not sure you want to. Elsewhere in the tent, a priest is reciting a spell over the jars. Not loudly, more like a humming. Chant, half-spoken, half-breathed. He's invoking Anubis, lord of the underworld, to watch over the embalming. Anubis has the head of a jackal and the vibe of someone who judges you quietly while weighing your soul on cosmic scales. You move carefully. You do not knock anything over, especially not the jars. After a while, you're assigned the least glamorous task, cleaning tools. This involves rinsing bronze knives in herbal water and drying them with linen, soaked in something that smells like old celery. You ask what happens next. Once the body's dry, we wrap it. Then coat it in resin, then more linen, then more resin, then more linen. You stare. That single quotes S. A lot of wrapping. Think of it like love, the apprentice says, dead serious. Sticky and layered. You snort. The chief embalmer Glares, you cough and look serious. Later, someone brings in a bundle wrapped in palm fronds. It's small, very small. No one speaks for a moment. Then the chief embalmer says a prayer and waves the apprentices away. You understand quietly that not every mummification is ceremonial. Some are personal. Some are sacred in ways even the gods don't interrupt. You step outside for air. The sun is lower now. The wind carries the scent of myrrh, ash, and life pretending not to end. You sit on a stone ledge, wiping your hands on your skirt. Your fingers smell like resin and salt. You close your eyes. A worker beside you lights a cone of incense and places it on a flat stone. To guide the soul, he says. You nod. He glances at your expression. First time. You nod. Again, he smiles, not unkindly. The body's just a costume. The soul keeps going. You want to believe that someone calls your name. You're done for the day. You walk away from the tent, past the painted walls, past the mourning families, past the men shaping tomb bricks, and into the gold-tinged silence of the desert. Not sure if you've helped or intruded. But you do know this. The afterlife is a production, and you just got a backstage pass. You wake up sick, not the kind of sick you can sleep off. Not I ate a sketchy fig sick. No, this is full body, full spirit. I might actually die here sick. Your head pounds. Your throat feels like it's been lined with sandpaper, and, insulted by the gods, your joints ache. You're either shivering or sweating or both, and every time you try to stand up, your vision goes starry. The family you're staying with gathers around you like mourners in training. One of them feels your forehead, mutters something about bad air, and disappears out the door to fetch help. You lie back on your mat, dizzy and damp, staring at the cracked ceiling as the flies begin to circle like tiny, unhelpful priests. Soon, the healer arrives. She's older. Not old, just old enough to have seen it all, lost patience with most of it, and still somehow make people drink things they definitely don't want to. Her eyes are sharp. Her robe is patched. Her arms are full of woven baskets. She squats beside you, sniffs once, mutters unbalanced humors, and begins unpacking. You are given a paste made of moldy bread and honey for your throat, a cup of lukewarm beer steeped with fennel and mint for your stomach, a small clay amulet in the shape of a frog for general bad luck, a scroll with a healing chant written in ink that smells like fish guts. You do not get to choose. You just drink. The bread and honey thing? Surprisingly, okay. The beer? Tastes like someone tried to make soup out of regret. You nearly gag. The healer slaps your shoulder and tells you to be grateful. The gods aren't picky, she says. As she works, she hums under her breath. Not a song, not a spell. Something in between. She grinds something with a pestle garlic, mustard seeds, maybe some dried lizard tail. She rubs a bit of the paste on your chest. It burns. You yelp. That means it's working. Of course it does. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian medicine was more magic than science, but lying here, covered in goo with a frog amulet on your stomach and smoke in your eyes, you suspect it's a bit of both. The healer finishes by tracing a symbol on your forehead using a dab of soot and oil. For protection, she says, and to confuse bad spirits. You want to ask how soot confuses anything, but she's already leaving. As she goes, she tosses a handful of herbs. into the brazier by the wall. It flares green. The whole room suddenly smells like rosemary and shoe-polish. You lie there, swimming in fever, listening to your heartbeat echo in your ears. The family tiptoes around you, whispering. Someone fans your face. Someone else recites a prayer to Sekhmet. Someone else tells you not to worry, it's probably just temple flu. You ask what temple flu is. They shrug. Later that evening, someone brings you a charm made of crocodile teeth strung on a reed thread. Hang it near your head. They say it bites sickness before it bites you. You do it. Why not? You're already a walking herbal stew. You doze in and out, in your fever dreams. You see strange things, a golden cat sitting on your chest, licking your face with a tongue made of fire. A line of gods dancing in slow motion across your ceiling. Your own reflection in the Nile, asking you how many frogs is too many. You wake up briefly to find someone drawing a circle of natron powder around your mat. They say it keeps the sickness in, or keeps worse things out. Either way, they won't cross it. You feel like a cursed mummy being quarantined by well-meaning amateurs. Eventually, the healer returns. She clucks her tongue and asks how your sweat smells, you say, like onions and fear. She nods like that's perfectly normal. She gives you another potion. This one tastes like someone set fire to a goat, then served the ashes and syrup. Your body protests. She pats your cheek and says you're improving. You lie back and listen to the sounds outside. Children laughing, a woman grinding flour, someone singing off-key. The world continues, even while you fade. A neighbor stops by and offers a charm. One carved from blue faience, shaped like a scarab. Heart protector, he says. Very important for the judgment ceremony. You squint. What ceremony? He smiles faintly. The one in the afterlife. Cool. That night you're visited by the priest. He doesn't come inside, just stands at the door and murmurs a blessing. He leaves a small bundle of papyrus, shreds, and a feather. No one explains why. You tuck them under your mat, just in case. You dream again. This time you're floating down the Nile on a reed boat. The water is black. The sky is full of stars. The boat is empty except for you and a lion-headed woman playing a flute. You ask her where you're going. She doesn't answer. You wake in the early morning, soaked in sweat, but the fever's gone. Mostly. Your throat is still rough, your bones still creak, but your mind is clear. The frog amulet is still on your chest. The healer returns one last time. She checks your pulse, grunts approvingly, and gives you a single preserved date. Eat. Live. Stay away from mummies. You ask what she means. She just smiles. Then she's gone. You lie there, eating the date slowly, thinking about mold, magic, and the very thin line between cure and curse. You may never look at bread the same way again. You're finally upright again, a little weak in the knees, but mostly alive. The household cheers your recovery with a lukewarm cup of lentil stew and the welcome news that you're being sent to the market today. Fresh air. You think. Movement. People. A break from ghosts, tombs, and fermented medical treatments. You're ready. You're not ready. The market is chaos wrapped in color, baked in sun and shouted in 4 different dialects. You step into the bustling square and are immediately hit by a wall of smells. Roasted onions, sweat, mud, incense, goat, and somehow wet wool despite the lack of sheep. Everywhere you look, people are moving. A man with a cart full of clay pots is arguing with a boy over broken merchandise. A woman is holding a chicken upside down and yelling at it like it owes her money. A teenage girl with a tray of fish balanced on her head is shouting something about fresh morning catch, probably still alive. Your task is simple. Trade one basket of lentils and a small jar of honey for wheat, a bundle of onions, and if there's extra, one copper needle. You already know this will not go as planned. First, you're stopped by a man offering genuine magic stones. You politely decline. He winks and hands you a pebble. For luck, he whispers, or curses, dealer's choice. You return it very quickly. Next, a scribe tries to recruit you into a pyramid scheme papyrus copying business. We just need 10 people to copy one scroll each, and then they each find 10 others. You run. You finally locate the wheat vendor, a stout woman with arms like tree trunks and an expression that dares you to complain about her prices. You offer your basket of lentils. She squints into it. Too dry, she says. This is storage lentil, not trade lentil. You blink. You did not know there was a difference. A long negotiation follows, in which you nod, plead, and make small jokes about crocodiles. Finally, she sighs, shoves a sack of wheat into your arms, and waves you away before she changes her mind. One down. You head toward the onion stall, already planning your apology if you have to return without the copper needle. But then something, or rather someone, catches your eye. A young man, tall, smiling, wearing a particularly well-draped linen kilt and holding a small carved comb. You lock eyes, he grins. You try to grin back, but probably look like a startled frog. He walks over casually and asks if you're new in town. You nod. He compliments your coal. You consider telling him it was applied by a healer during a fever dream, but think better. Of it, he offers you a lotus flower. You laugh and accept. He says his name is Nenny. You say yours. You don't mention that you aren't from this century. Before you can respond with anything coherent, a voice shouts, "Nenny." You turn. A woman is glaring from across the market, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, jaw set to betrayal. She stomps over, grabs the flower from your hand, and throws it on the ground. "You're flirting?" She barks at Nenny. "Again?" He stammers. You back away slowly. She turns to you. "He's married." You freeze. He says he's not, but don't. Believe him. I cursed his last lover's sandals. She still limps. You nod, mutter something about onions, and vanish into the nearest vegetable pile. Once you're a safe distance away, and partially hidden behind some suspicious-looking gourds, you reflect on your very brief foray into ancient Egyptian romance. Lesson learned. Historians still argue how much personal freedom women had in relationships, but judging by what just happened, they definitely had freedom and possibly hexes. Eventually you find the onion seller. She's been watching the drama from afar. "First time, huh?" she says, handing you a bundle. "Don't worry. They always come back to their wives. Until they don't. Then it gets exciting." You nod solemnly and hand her the honey jar. She inspects it, sniffs, nods. "You want the needle too?" You nod. She smiles. "Tell me a good joke." You blink. "What?" "Make me laugh, and you get the needle." You rack your brain. Nothing. Then you remember the frog dream. You tell her truthfully about a fever vision in which a chorus A frog's held a judgment ceremony where your sins were weighed against a sandal. She laughs loud, slaps her knee. Fine, she says. You earned it. She tosses the needle into your palm, wraps the onions in papyrus, and sends you on your way. Victorious. Well, mostly. On the way back, you pass a street performer doing tricks with a stick and a wooden hoop. Children cheer. You pause, smiling. Then someone tugs your sleeve. It's Nenny. Again, with a different flower. Forget her, he says. That was my cousin. Maybe. You give him a look, he sighs. Okay, my wife, but only for now. You shake your head and keep walking. He calls. After you. At least let me give you a love charm. You don't turn around. You do hear his wife's voice again, though. Much closer than before. You walk faster, back home, you present your haul. The family cheers. Onions, wheat, needle, all intact. Number. Purses, probably. Someone offers you a roasted fish. You accept. It tastes like smoky victory. As you eat, you tell the story of Nene and the flying lotus. The whole household laughs. Even the ghost, probably. And as night falls, you sit on the roof again, this time voluntarily, watching the stars blink into place. Maybe you didn't find romance, but you did find the copper needle, which in ancient Egypt might just be the same thing. You're feeling good. You survived an illness. You successfully navigated the marketplace without becoming part of an eternal love triangle. You even made someone laugh, a rare currency in this sunburned society of curses, taxes, and constantly exploding bread ovens. So, of course, today's the day everything goes wrong. You wake up to a banging on the door. Two officials stand outside, one in a starched linen kilt with red embroidery, the other with a reed switch tucked behind his ear. Like a smug, legalistic bookmark. They say your name. Well, not your real name. The one they've given you since you arrived. You nod cautiously. You violated a market rule, one of them announces, and must report for civic correction. You stare. What rule? They glance at a clay tablet. Public mockery of a registered vendor. Suspicious trade activity. Use of magical elements without proper temple clearance. You blink. I bought onions. They nod. You try to explain that the magic was just a fever dream and that the laughter was consensual. They're not impressed. You're told to come with them. Now, briefly consider running. They both raise their eyebrows like they dare you to. So you go. You're marched through the village under the skeptical gaze of neighbors and relatives. Children whisper. Someone yells Hexer in a teasing voice. Someone else offers you a date as a show of solidarity. You eat it sadly. You're brought to the governor's courtyard where other people are already waiting. One man is sobbing about goat theft. A woman insists she did not put a curse on her neighbor's bread. A teenager looks very guilty next to a broken lyre. You're told to wait. Then wait some more. Then finally called up. Your hearing consists of standing in front of a scribe who's chewing on a reed stylus and barely looking at you. He listens to the accusations, sighs deeply, and asks if you have any offerings of contrition. You panic. You reach into your satchel and offer the frog amulet. He squints. From a fever ritual? You nod. He shrugs. Acceptable. Then he asks for a statement of guilt. You say, I'm not sure what I did. He nods. Correct answer. You'll be fined and shamed. Case closed. You're stunned. Weight shamed? They don't answer. You're already being led away by a very tall man with a very wide smile and a very, very long reed. 10 minutes later, you're standing in the center of the village square, holding a sign that reads, "Traded laughter for onions," while the tall man taps you on the shoulders, lightly, symbolically, with the reed switch. Children laugh. Adults smirk. A goat watches silently, judging Dot. It's not painful. It's just ... embarrassing ... and in Egypt. That's the point. Historians still debate how common public shaming was in minor legal cases. But clearly, it's alive and well in your corner of the Nile. Afterward, you're released back into society, with the equivalent of a shrug and a sarcastic, "Don't do it again." You trudge home, muttering under your breath. You pass Nanny on the way. He sees the sign, snorts, and says, "I liked the part about the frog." You don't reply at home. Your host family welcomes you like a returning war hero. They ask, "What?" You learned. You say, "Never trade lentils with charisma." They nod. Someone brings you a bowl of stew. Someone else hangs your shame sign on the wall for memory. You are less amused. Later that night, as the sun disappears and the breeze returns, you reflect on what just happened. You were publicly called out. You were accused of sorcery. You were smacked gently by a bureaucrat with a reed. But somehow, you're not mad. Ancient Egyptian justice isn't about revenge. It's about the cosmic balance, order, harmony. If someone tips the balance, they don't get thrown in jail. They get corrected, rebalanced, publicly, yes. Embarrassingly, sure, but it ends. People move on, even the goat. You climb to the roof, as always, and lie back. Stars above. Crickets below. The Nile glimmers faintly in the distance. Someone climbs up beside you and offers a chunk of honeycomb. You eat in silence. Eventually, the goat climbs up too. You think that's fine. You survived ancient law. You've been weighed. Found slightly ridiculous. And still, you're here. That night, your dreams go sideways. It starts with a boat flat-bottomed, papyrus-lined, gliding across the Nile in total silence. You're seated in the middle, wrapped in linen, holding a feather. Just a feather. You look down at it. It's white, impossibly clean, and far too light to feel real. Then you notice what's steering the boat. A jackal-headed figure stands at the stern, tall, regal, completely still. His black snout glints in the moonlight. You don't need a history book to know who that is. Anubis. You try to speak. You can't. Your mouth doesn't work in dreams. The boat glides on. You pass temples carved into cliffs, cities buried under sand, statues with blank eyes, all empty, all watching. The air is thick with incense and a soft whisper you can't quite understand. Eventually, the boat stops. You're in front of a massive gate tall as a pyramid, carved with 1,000 symbols. A woman waits at the entrance. She's tall, powerful, with the head of a lioness and eyes that burn with gold. You realize it's Sekhmet. She doesn't speak either, just nods toward the gate. It opens. You walk through. Inside is the Hall of Two. Truth's the place where souls are judged. You know this from the stories, from the scrolls, from the wall paintings you've seen smeared across every tomb from here to Thebes. A massive scale dominates the center of the hall. On one side, your heart. On the other, The feather, you didn't bring your heart, but it's there anyway, placed gently by Anubis, who now watches from the shadows. Standing beside the scale is Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe of the gods, holding a pen made of starlight. He waits. Your heart is weighed, and for one horrible second, it dips. Just a little. The hall goes still. Then out from the darkness emerges Ammit, the devourer of the unworthy. Part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus, all teeth. She crouches near the scale, tail twitching, mouth opening slowly. You panic. You try to shout. I didn't mean to laugh in the market. I didn't know the lentils were dry. The frog amulet was given to me. Stillness. The scale rights itself. The feather floats gently in the air. The heart rises. A MIT snorts and vanishes. You collapse to your knees. Thoth nods, makes a single mark on his scroll, and disappears. Anubis approaches and touches your shoulder. You wake up. Your mat is soaked. Your mouth is dry. Your heart is pounding like a priest with a festival drum. You lie there, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to process whatever just happened. Dream, vision, psychic postcard from Osiris. Either way you passed. You get up slowly, half expecting to still be holding the feather. You're not. But your chest feels lighter. Outside, the village is stirring. A cool wind carries the scent of baking bread and the promise of a morning that hasn't turned awful yet. You step outside. People are sweeping courtyards, lighting cook fires, stretching their arms toward the sky in sleepy sun prayers. A girl hums a melody while pounding dough. A boy wrestles a goat into a bath it clearly does not want. Life continues. You feel a little disconnected, like the dream left a piece of you floating somewhere near the field of reeds. A woman passes and hands you a small lotus flower. You ask, why? She shrugs. You looked like you needed one. You accept it. Later that morning, a priest from the local temple stops by. He's visiting homes to give blessings before the festival of Osiris. When he sees you, he pauses. You've had a visitation, he says. You nod slowly. He nods back like this is just a Tuesday. He touches your forehead, mutters a phrase in old ceremonial Egyptian, and gives you a tiny charm made of turquoise. It's the symbol of Mat, the goddess of truth, balance, cosmic order. You ask if he gives it to everyone. He smiles faintly. Only those who've passed the trial. You want to ask more, but he's already moving on, trailing incense and quiet authority. You sit near the river, watching the lotus flower float in a shallow clay bowl. The water glimmers. A heron stalks a fish in total silence. A child skips stones nearby, missing more than hitting. You close your eyes. You think about what judgment really means. It's not punishment. Not here. It's weighing. Balance. You've done a lot. Good, bad, absurd. You've insulted a vendor. You've helped with a burial. You've been healed with mold. You've flirted. You've been cursed. You've laughed. And still, the feather rose. Maybe that's all any of us can hope. For the sun rises fully, painting everything in molten gold. You breathe deep. You're still here, and you're still worthy. The day arrives quietly. No shouting vendors. No surprise funerals. No magical frogs. Just the breeze through the palms, the low cooing of doves, and the rhythmic thump of someone kneading dough in a nearby courtyard. You wake feeling strangely whole. Your feet don't hurt. Your throat isn't coated in lint. And no one's cursed you yet, not even a little, which is when you realize it's your last day. The Nile glows like melted bronze in the early light. The village breathes in rhythm, and you dusty, sun-kissed, sand dash in dash every dash crevice. You have one more morning in this ancient land. You rise slowly, wrapping your linen tunic one last time. Someone hands you a cup of sour beer, and you drink it without complaint. You've stopped asking what's in things. You just say thank you now. The family gathers to see you off, even though you're not sure where you're going. Maybe they just know. Maybe everyone does. They gift you a tiny satchel filled with small, symbolic items. A strip of linen, a single barley seed, a blue scarab bead, and a tiny clay cup. For your next life, someone says you bow as you make your way down to the riverbank. The village slowly follows. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, just people ambling behind, curious, kind, not wanting to miss the moment. A boat waits. Not one of the papyrus rafts you've seen before. This one is special. The hull gleams with polished cedar. Painted eyes stare from the prow. The oars are still, waiting. The ferryman nods once. His face is lined like cracked mud in dry season. You step on board. The river is calm. The boat moves on its own. From the shore, people raise hands in farewell. A woman throws a garland of dried lotus flowers into the water. A child shouts your name and waves a stick like a magic wand. You sit at the center of the boat, silent. On the far bank, pyramids rise in the distance, sharp, golden, impossibly massive. You've seen them from afar before, but now they shine. Like lighthouses, like gods sleeping in triangles. As you drift closer, the desert opens, wide, empty, full of stories buried beneath sand and stone. You step off the boat. The air here is still, but not dead. You can almost hear whispers in the dunes, not haunting, more like remembering. A guide appears, an old man in a white robe, holding a reed pen. He looks vaguely familiar. Time to see the archives, he says. He leads you through what looks like a carved stone passage, cool and dry. The walls are covered in hieroglyphs, not the stiff, stylized ones from temples, but loose, flowing, alive. And they're etched into the wall. You see it. Your story. Not grand, not heroic, but it's there. You helping shape bricks. You dancing at the Sekhmet festival. You negotiating for onions. You laughing, lost, cursed, healed. Someone has written you into Egypt. You touch the wall. The stone is warm. And then wind down begins. The walls of the archive gently fade from view as your breath softens. The heat of the day lifts, replaced by the hush of evening. The desert exhale wraps around you like linen light, whispering, reassuring. Above, the sky dims from gold to violet, then to velvet blue. Stars prick the heavens, calm and patient. You lie down beside a dune, the sand beneath you finally cool, finally soft. A slow breeze hums like a lullaby. The Nile glistens in the distance, its current slow and sure, carrying every story, every soul, every grain of ancient time forward. The gods sleep. The priests have gone quiet. Even the ghosts curl up and rest. Your eyes begin to close, the world melting into warm darkness. No more reed switches, no more market shaming, no more crocodile ointment, just the hush of memory. the weight of a feather. You have been judged, you have been seen, and you are at peace. Sweet dreams.